Hey everybody, it's Ryan Metzler here again, and I'm going to talk to you today about one of the games that was a huge hit at Gen Con from a huge publisher right now, and that is Plaid Hat Games. This is Ash's Rise of the Phoenixborn, which is a 2 to 4 player card game. It's not a CCG, and technically it's not an LCG, but it's in that vein of games on which you can either have pre-made decks, or you can draft decks, or you can decide to customize your own decks, however you'd like to play. But each player controls a Phoenixborn with different characteristics, a different army of units or, guys at their disposal, spells, and various different ways of doing things. But it's not just cards, it also incorporates dice. So there could be some randomness to it. Is there? Well, why don't we go ahead and take a look at what you get inside of this box. We'll see how the game plays, and we'll come back here at the end and get my opinions on Ash's Rise of the Phoenixborn. So here you can see the components for Ash's Rise of the Phoenixborn all set up for a 2-player game. Now it can play 2 to 4. We'll be looking at 2 players, but extrapolate that out to a 4-player game. Each player will control a Phoenixborn, and that Phoenixborn is what they're trying to protect. We have Meoni Viper here and Saria Guideman over on this side. They will have a battlefield value, a spellboard value, and then a life value. So battlefield is how many units they can have on the field, spellboard is how many spells they can have out, and their life is, of course, what you're trying to keep them having or prevent them from losing, because if they go down to 0 life, you will lose the game. Each player will also have a deck full of cards here, and these cards can either be predetermined, there are some standard decks you can use, or you can draft a deck, or you can build your own deck, of course, so depending on how you'd like to do that. And then they will have some summoning spells, or I guess they call them conjurations in this case. So this is their conjuration pile, and oftentimes the spells in their deck will let them bring out conjurations from this pile, and you'll simply sift through it to find what you would like. Now, depending on what you've used to build your deck, you will have some dice, and those dice will look like this. So Meoni here has 5 of these blue dice and 5 of the pink dice, so they're natural and charm magics, respectively. Saria over here has the same charm, but instead of natural, she has illusion magic, so she's going to have 5 of each. If you were to draft a deck, you'd actually get to choose your dice, and same if you were to build it. So there's a little bit of variation in how you can set that up. Now, how the game is going to work is that each player is going to roll their dice at the start of each round. So this is the prepare phase, and each player will roll their dice. And they will kind of sort them out based on the symbols they get. And there are essentially 3 different symbols on each die. So depending on what type of die you will have different symbols. So both players will roll these here, and they will place them to one side of their board. I have this player's side of the board on their left. These are their unused dice, and as they use dice, they will pass over to the other side. Our other player has the same setup, so they're going to sort their dice out. And at the beginning of the game, each player will look to see how many basic dice they have. So this player has 4. This player has 2 basic symbols, so the player closer to me will be the start player. Now, as I said, each of these dice has 3 different symbols. The most powerful symbol, which in the case of nature is a frog, then the middle symbol, which is a leaf, and then all dice have a basic symbol, which is, of course, the most basic or least powerful symbol. On the pinks, it's snakes, hearts, and basics, and on the purples over here, it's going to be wolves, faces, and basics. I don't know if they have actual names, but that's what I call all of them. Each player will also start the game with a hand of cards. Now, this hand of cards is not like you would see in most CCG or LCG games. You actually get to choose your starting 5 cards for your hand. So, in this case, the player playing Meoni has chosen Transfer, which is an action spell that will allow them to move a token from target player's non-Phoenixborn card onto any other non-Phoenixborn card in that player's control. So they can transfer a token from one place to another. Or Open Memories, which is going to allow them to draw 1 card from their, they can search their draw pile for a card and put it into their hand, and if they do so, they shuffle their draw pile. So it's a find a specific card. They also have a couple of summon cards. These cards will get played out into their spell board. They usually have no cost, although some of them do have a cost, but they can be activated later in order to give them an action, and these will all summon something from the conjuration pile, typically a creature that will go into the battlefield and be ready to attack the other player, either their creatures or their Phoenixborn. On a player's turn, knowing that Saria is the first player here, they are going to get one what we call a main action and one what we call a side action. A main action will have a specific symbol associated with it. It's going to be a little hard to see, but you can see it here on Summon Three-Eyed Owl. And it's this kind of compass rose symbol up here in the top right-hand corner. This compass rose symbol denotes a main action, and there are several things you can do as a main action. One would be to play a card to your area. So this one just says that it costs a main action. It has no other requirements, so I don't have to pay any dice. I would simply place it in my spell board, and that's my main action. On a future turn, if we look a little bit more closely, you can actually see at the bottom, and it's very hard to see, but there is a main action symbol that says that I can pay an exhaustion, meaning I can exhaust this card by placing a token on it, showing that it's been used, and pay a heart die. And if I do that, it's going to allow me to put a three-eyed owl onto my battlefield from my conjuration pile. So those are in here, and it would bring one of these out. So essentially, there are two different ways to get creatures onto the battlefield. You can conjure them with spells, or there are creatures that you can have in your hand to play directly. And that would also cost you a main action. So if we take a look at this one, we have Rose Fire Dancer. And she has the main action symbol on her card, but underneath it she has a face symbol and a basic symbol. So if I wanted to play this, I would use my main action, pay a face and a basic, moving them to my exhausted pile, and I can place her out on the board. So those types of things are main actions. The other thing you can do as a main action is if you already have a creature on the board, you can use it to attack either the other player's Phoenixborn or the other player's units. When you attack a Phoenixborn, you simply declare which units you're using to attack that Phoenixborn, and they would do their attack damage to the Phoenixborn in question. However, if your opponent has units out on the board, they can use them to block one-to-one any of your units. When this happens, and let's just say that this player has this creature out on the board, they have a Gilder. The Gilder would block the Rose Fire Dancer that is trying to attack Meoni Viper. The Rose Fire Dancer does an attack of 3, the Gilder has a life of 2, so the Rose Fire Dancer would kill the Gilder. Now in this case, the Gilder has a choice. He can either decide to attack back, which he would, it was called countering, and he would deal his damage back to the Rose Fire Dancer, which is 1 damage, killing it as well. If this was a stronger creature, it could decide to block or not, or sorry, to counter or not to counter. If it does counter, it exhausts itself and won't be able to attack later on, but if it decides not to counter, it won't deal its damage back, it absorbs the damage dealt to it, so it takes damage marked by counters, and then it could attack on a future turn or be used to do something else. So you have to decide when you block whether you'd like to counter or not in order to exhaust your creature or not. When you attack a unit, say that this was the situation, and instead of attacking Meoni, I decided to attack the Gilder, you can just deal your damage directly to that. However, some units have unit guard, much like the Gilder here. So if we had 2 Gilders, this one could decide to block for that one because it has unit guard. And of course it steps into place, and the damage is dealt to the unit guarding blocker. This is one way to remove units from the table, and again they have the option of countering or not when they block the damage. So those are your main actions, and the last main action you have is to pass. Passing simply passes the turn to your opposing players, and if they continue to play, you get another chance to play the next time your turn comes around. Now in addition to a main action, you also get a side action, and side actions are denoted by a different symbol. In this case, it is kind of a diamond or star-shaped diamond, or it's kind of hard to describe, but it's more like a diamond than a star. But this is an action that you get to do in addition to your main action. So you get 1 main and 1 side per turn. Side actions can be many and various. There's a lot of things they could be. So for example, this one says that I exhaust Rose Fire Dancer to exhaust a target unit. So again, let's say that the Gilder is out here. I can exhaust Rose Fire Dancer to exhaust the Gilder. This will prevent it from blocking for somebody else or prevent it from attacking. So if there's a very powerful unit on board, sometimes Rose Fire Dancer will exhaust herself simply to make sure that it can't do anything. There are other side actions which could be to meditate. Let's say you don't have the dice you need on your board in order to do something. You can discard cards from your hand in order to get the appropriate dice. So I could discard 2 cards if I wanted to from my hand in order to switch the faces on 2 dice. Let's say I need a snake and I need a wolf, and that would be my side action for the turn, and then if I still had cards I wanted to play as my main action, I could. The final side action you have is to activate a dice power, and each of these dice has an inherent power. So for example, the snake one says that I can use a snake die in order to place that die onto a creature and give it +1 attack and +1 life. Illusion Magic says that I can use a wolf to move a die from the opponent's active dice pool, so from this side over to the other, getting rid of it. And this can be very powerful if you know that they need that dice face. The frog here allows you to deal 1 damage to a target unit, and the snake is the same as the other one we always saw. So these are only for the highest face die on a die, so you always have to hit the highest one in order to do these actions. So once you've done your main action and your side action, you'll pass the turn to the opposing player, who will then take their turn. So basically you're going to go on in this manner until one player manages to deal damage equal to the life value of the other player's Phoenixborn to that Phoenixborn. But if this hasn't happened sometime during these player turns phases until both players pass, you will go into the recovery phase. The recovery phase is the end of the round when both players pass consecutively. When this happens, the first thing you're going to do is you're going to recover. So you'll see that there's a recover value on units. In this case, and in the case of everything on the board, it's 0. But some units may have a recover value of 1, up to 3, 4, could be even higher, depending on what you've done to them. So let's say that the Gilder had taken a damage and he had a recover value of 1 instead of 0. If he survives to the end of the round, he will recover that 1 damage because he has a recover of 1. After that's done, any units that are exhausted for any reason, let's say they've been attacked, or any spells that are exhausted because they've been used, will remove their exhaustion up to 1. If there are multiple exhaustion tokens on a card, you only remove 1 of them, so it can say exhausted for multiple rounds. Then, any dice you have left over, let's say we'd used all of these, but these 2 are remaining, you can decide to either keep them on the faces they're on, or exhaust them so that you can re-roll them for the next round. Once that's done, you're going to start the next round by rolling any dice you decide that you want to roll, any ones that are used or any ones you decided that were now exhausted, and resetting them up on your unexhausted side of your pile. You may then discard any cards you would like from your hand, you will draw back up to 5 and start with another round. So as I mentioned at the beginning, there are a variety of different decks. For example, Mayoni Viper here controls creatures by placing tokens on them, and these tokens will sometimes allow her to create stronger creatures. Sometimes they will allow her to deal damage to other things. She can manipulate tokens, so if something becomes exhausted, she can make it unexhausted, and there's a variety of different things she can do with these. Saria's main abilities are going to be focused on making your opponent discard cards from their hand, discard cards from their deck, or simply draw more cards so that they empty their deck faster. And this is important because during the draw phase, if you need to draw cards but can't, your Phoenixborn will take a damage for every card they can't draw. Some of the other people are more geared towards dealing a lot of damage, either with creatures or directly. Some are more focused on controlling other creatures, and others maybe just want to summon a lot of things or replace their units with recursion as things go on. So there's a variety of different things to choose from, a variety of different ways to build and play decks, a variety of different dice and ways to use them, and overall, basically, whoever best chooses, plans, and plays their deck will be the winner. And there you have it. That is Ash's Rise of the Phoenixborn from Plaid Hat Games. Now, of course, you're going to get a lot of comparisons drawn to Magic the Gathering, so I'm going to get that right out of the way. Obviously, this is influenced by Magic. Dueling magicians, or multiple attacking magicians, all trying to kill one another, is not a new concept. So let's just go ahead and say that it's derivative in that form. However, there are several things that have this game stand apart from Magic. The first is the fact that you can choose your starting hand. This is awesome. You can plan right off the bat if you know who your opposing Phoenixborn or opposing Phoenixborns are. You can take your starting hand and customize it according to the strategy that they might be using or how you best think that you can approach attacking them. So that's very nice. Second, there's the dice. Of course, you see dice and you're going to think randomness. And of course, when you roll these dice, there is some random element to that whole play style. But the fact that the basic symbols are, of course, basic, but the medium and higher level symbols can be used as anything below them is a very nice touch. On top of that, the ability to discard cards in order to set faces on your dice really helps to mitigate the issues that you have with random die rolling, not generating the resources you need. So those are all very nice aspects to this game. The drafting element that it introduces is nice and looks pretty straightforward. I haven't really played much draft, but it seems relatively straightforward. And just kind of everything combined, the really easy way to build your decks, the very interesting element of having units always available on the side that you can play from your spells that you've played into your spell board is nice. And so there's just a lot of kind of nice combinations you can do with the cards that are already included in the basic set. So overall, very easy to play, very easy to learn. Some cool new aspects that haven't been done exactly the same way in these CCG or LCG style games before, and all around one that I'm enjoying very much. I look forward to seeing what they do with it in the future. I'm sure there are expansions to come, and I eagerly await them.
Thanks so much for watching the Dice Tower videos. Find more great videos and reviews, as well as our top-rated audio podcast at Dicetower.com. You can also find other great shows at Dicetowernetwork.com. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower. The Dice Tower is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc., where you can find great games for great prices. Cool stuff in stock. Check them out at CoolStuffInc.com.